Here's the agenda. We're going to start out big. We're going to talk about the universe. Am I blocking, by the way? We're going to talk about the universe, and we're going to talk about humankind, and then we're going to talk about your life, and then we're going to talk about your career, and the next step. Big universe. Universe is 13.5 billion years old. There's 100 billion, I should have done these step by step, because when you say there's 100 billion stars in our galaxy, and you go, wow, that's like when you're smoking a joint or something, you say, wow. And then you say, guess how many galaxies there are? And you say, oh, no, it's probably like 100 or probably like 1,000, but there's 100 billion galaxies. So it's a big, big ass universe. And everything in the universe is like speeding away from each other, like at the speed of light. So it's like big, and it's getting bigger all the time. And the laws that govern the big things in the universe are incompatible with the laws that govern the very, very teeny things in the universe. So there's a whole lot of stuff that people are going, I don't even know how that works. And in addition to the vast size of this universe, we don't even know, like there's dark matter and dark energy comprises the majority of the universe. Nobody even really knows what that is. It's kind of like when you have to do your mathematical equations and what you're left with to fill in, that's what that is. They say, well, we don't know that we're going to call that dark matter and dark energy. So we can't see it, we can't measure it, we can't describe it. And most of the above has really just been learned in the last 50 years. So really in the last 50 years, we've realized what a big fucking universe it is, and we don't know anything. We don't know anything. So that kind of is a mind blower to start out with. Yeah. Humankind, we've been on, the Earth has been around for about 4.5 billion years. First sign of life came 3.8 billion years ago. And Homo sapiens only been around for the last 200,000 years. And at first there were Homo sapiens and there were Neanderthals and there were several that kind of overlapped on the timeline. About, I don't have that on here, but 15,000 years ago, all the others, Homo died off, the Neanderthals died off, and Homo sapiens, really we've only had the planet as the dominant to ourselves for the last 10,000 years or so.
You can go over the biblical stuff too?
I did not put the biblical timeline on. I did put 2,000 years ago as Christianity, so if you're the biblical, then you can cross out anything above 2,000 years ago. Earth was created 2,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago. Really only in the last 5,000 years that people had kingdoms. Scientific revolution 500 years ago, industrial revolution, and I just added McDonald's in Google because I liked the picture of this fat guy on the end, which I thought it kind of epitomized where we're going. But so much of what we're doing really is brand new, and so much of even what's in our brains is from 100,000 years ago or 200,000 years ago. Really, that's just to give perspective on where we're all at, which is you're not recording this, right? Real vision doesn't matter. What we're doing, our lives are very short, and I think sometimes we get so caught up in, fuck, I gotta get that fucking office move done, I gotta get the internet, and I think it can be counterproductive both in the long term, but even in the short run, to get so stressed out about things. When take the long view and you say, first of all, we're all going to be dead. Everybody in this room is going to be dead 60 years from now. WeWork's not going to be here. So just like, take it from that perspective. Look at the average lifespan of about 80 and think about how old you are now and what you want to do in your life and what you've done so far. And you have a plan for doing it. And if you start out on that, then you kind of presses you toward urgency because you say, shit, I don't really have that much longer. From the age of, what are you going to be, 75? You're going to be, crapping in a bedpan from then. So you got, how many good years do I have left?
And to you, when he said that, you will be crapping at 75. That's my cutoff.
I think,
36 and that's happening.
I think early in my career, I think that this career is the most important thing in life. And how I go about it is the most important thing, and everybody else is the most important thing to everybody else too. My career is the most important thing to you, and it's kind of like when you're in kindergarten and you think all the first graders are looking at you and watching what you're doing, when you realize nobody really cares what you're doing. It's up to you. So how you find meaning in your career, how you find meaning in your life, it's up to you. It's between you and your mom, or between you and God. Right.
Thank you.
So think about it from that perspective, but then think about your plan and how Real Vision fits into that plan. Real Vision may not be the linchpin of your life, but you're here now, and it's what you're doing, and you need to do a good job at it and make that your basis for how you want to plan the rest of your life. Your career. In a nutshell, 20s is the foundation. You graduate from college, you go out, you get a first job. Ideally, it's in the kind of field that you want it to be. That's not always true, but it may be, if you're an actor, you may spend your 20s or your 30s and 40s working in a cafe trying to get your break. 30s is typically where once you're in your 30s, you're kind of in your field, generally speaking. Some people make late adjustments and change careers, but it's hard to make a change from if you're in your 30s to go back to doing something else. Peak earnings generally in the 40s and 50s, not always true. And then 60s, retirement maybe. So if you look at really, you've got 20, 30 years to really do what you want to do. If you look at geniuses, a lot of people get done their most productive stuff by the time they're 25 or 35 or 40. It doesn't mean you can't do productive stuff when you're 60 or 65 like Dr. Seuss, but Rodney Dangerfield, sure, Alec Guinness, but in general, you can't really wait, and you can't, I think when I was younger, I went to film school and I thought, okay, I'm gonna wait for someone to give me a job and to discover me and mentor me on my way. And there's not really that many people that are looking to mentor somebody else. It's kind of up to you to do what you want to do. And I think a lot of people also think, well, I'm 25 now, I don't have to worry that much about it because things will progress. When I'm 35, I'm going to be rich, and when I'm 45, I'll be retired. But unless you really get to it, it doesn't happen by itself, and you don't have that much time to do it. There's a lot of disruptors that happen in a career. I think number one is probably the ability to break into a chosen field, particularly in an area like media, where it's just because you want a job in media doesn't mean you get it. If you want to be an accountant, that's a little bit easier. If you want to be a podiatrist, well, you got to go to podiatry school, but generally speaking, you can do that. If you want to be an on-air presenter, that's harder. You got to kind of claw your way in and work your way up. Lack of advancement. Media, I'm going to talk really about media for all of this because media is a very competitive field, and it's not like people retire and then you move up. There's constantly new people coming in. There's the new wonder kinds that are coming in that are, the 25-year-old genius is going to take over Vice, and so you have to press for that yourself. It doesn't automatically happen. Layoffs. I'll speak about media again. Media is a very challenged sector right now and has been for a while. What makes it great is it's always dynamic and there's always changes going on, but also makes it kind of scary because it's musical chairs, and every year Time Inc. goes out of business, or even, I'll use Time Inc. as an example, was this vaunted company, seemed as the most stable company in the world, and it was a place everybody wanted to work in the 60s and the 70s, and it doesn't exist now. And when Meredith bought Time Inc., the first thing they did was start chopping off little bits of it and start laying off people. So no matter where you are, there's always layoffs. If Google's probably doing pretty well right now, Facebook doing pretty well right now, and Amazon doing pretty well. So if you're one of those, you're probably better positioned not to be laid off, at least in the next 5 years. However, that's what we said about Yahoo 10 years ago. And if you were at Yahoo and you got bought by Verizon, there's a good chance, there was a 15% chance you got laid off, because that's how many they laid off. In 2000, everybody said, if I work for AOL Time Warner, I'm set for life. But 2001, you're probably out of a job. If you were Ted Turner, you lost $1 billion. And that happens. There's still, for as much as we either want to admit it or don't want to admit it, there's a lot of sexism, there's a lot of racism. Companies go out of business. Bad managers. I've been in 2 different companies where I came in under a manager, and within 6 months the manager got fired and left, and then you're kind of hanging out there. So much of this is politics, who you work for. Does the person who you work for like you? Do they think you're doing a good job? You may be doing great, you may be killing it. A new manager comes in and says, this is not the person I want in the role. I'll go through the rest of the list quickly. Power struggles, like I just mentioned, mergers, acquisitions, recessions, earthquakes and tsunamis. I don't know how really realistic those are, but shit happens. And your own bad decisions factor into it as well. And there's also external life events. Your parents get old and you decide, I'm gonna go, help my parents. You went through a struggle with cancer. You got a big thing on your arm to acknowledge it, and I think those kind of things shape your life decisions. And for whatever reason, you decided to stay in media. Disruptors. This is Woody Allen. He says, if you want to make God laugh, tell him about your plans. I don't even have anything else to say about that other than that you can have great plans and they don't always come to fruition, and that's the way it goes. Unspoken rules. Unspoken rules. You know what I'll do? I'll stop. Does anybody have any questions about the universe?
How fucked are we?
How fucked are we?
I feel like we've gone down this downward spiral.
We are not fucked at all. Everything is great because every problem that you have, if you wait long enough, it will go away.
That's true.
Even yourself.
If you wait 50 years, every problem you have will be gone.
It's true.
So you got nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
Everything's good.
Sweet.
Okay, back to career. Number 1, have a goal. This is true basically every single endeavor, not just your career, but you got to have a goal. If you don't have a goal, you're not going to, well, I guess it's obvious to say if you don't have a goal, you're not going to achieve it. Number 2, have a plan. It's good to have a goal, but if your goal is I'm going to be rich, I'm going to make $1 billion, but you don't have a plan, then your goal sucks because it's not going to happen unless something falls in your lap. So you have to have a plan. And generally you have to have a backup plan and a backup plan to that. And you say, well, if I fail at this, if I don't get the job at Vice, then what's going to happen? Okay, then I'm going to keep sending out my resume. I'm going to get the job at Vox. If I don't get the job at Vox, I'm going to get the job at... That was assuming you didn't get the job at Real Vision first. You got to be willing to modify your plans and sometimes your goals as well. It's who you know. Every job, not every job, but I probably had 10 jobs, I guess, and I would say 8 of those have been based on I knew somebody, and they sent me an email and said, hey, Todd, so-and-so is looking for a new so-and-so. Do you want to do it? Or do you want to come and interview? Or I was looking for a job at a place, and I emailed somebody that I knew on LinkedIn. There's only been a couple times. There's only 2 jobs I've ever had that went differently. One of them was Real Vision. With the Real Vision, I was at a job in 2017 that was winding down, and I got an email from Alan who said, hey mate, it's Alan, and have you ever heard of Real Vision? I said, no. And he said, would you be interested in having a conversation about it? I said, in a couple days, sure. So then 45 minutes later, the phone rings. He said, hey, it's Alan. I'm sorry, I was going to follow up in a couple days, but sorry for the rush, but our CEO, Raul, is in town. We'd like to meet with you tomorrow. I said, oh, okay, sure. So I did that, and then literally 15 minutes after the interview, I had my phone because I was going to ping back Alan and say it went pretty well. And bing, phone rings, it's Alan. Oh, so Raul said it went pretty well, but there's 2 other guys we want you to meet. Damien, and I can't remember who else, maybe Jack. Can you come into the WeWork? Oh, sure. So tomorrow. So I went down the next day. So now we're 3 days into it, and I've already met with 3 different people. 15 minutes after the interview with those guys, I'm getting ready to call him to say it went pretty well. The phone rings, and he says, can you come down to Cayman? I said, fuck, yeah, okay. So the next week, I was on a plane down to Cayman. I thought, well, this is pretty serious. So I better do a little research on the company, right? So I looked at the company and I said, I kind of like it that they're so quick. because I was winding down my other job, and I had 3 other things that were kind of brewing, but they'd been brewing for the last 2 months, and it was like nothing was coming on. I said, "Fuck it! If they make me an offer, and I'm gonna take it." So anyway, sorry for the diversion, but it's who you know, except in this case, it's hard to change fields. Once you've got a resume, and your resume says that you are a producer, or more likely, if your resume says you're an accountant, and you say, "But I'm an accountant at Real Vision, and I want to be a producer at Real Vision." A place like Real Vision is probably a little easier to jump the fence, but at NBC it's virtually impossible, because once you're in your little rut, you're not going to get out of there. And if you're an accountant at NBC, you're never going to become a producer for the Today Show. We're all salespeople. Pretty much everything you do, it's 2 things. We're all selling ourselves 100% of the time, meaning how you get this job, how you are rewarded for this job, how you get your next job is all about selling yourself. And even on a broader scale, what we all do individually in this company is all about how we generate revenue and how the company survives by generating revenue. It's a direct correlation in your case because you're generating revenue. For you, it's more the work you do has to be so good that people look at it and say, "Oh, fuck, this is good. I'll pay more for this."
All the motion graphics are so good, I'll show $150.
That's right.
I've never seen such beautiful typography.
And so it's a little more indirect in your case, but the quality of the product, obviously, it helps in terms of how many people we get on renewals. The quality of the marketing materials, obviously.
You're ready to subscribe now.
Exactly. So essentially, we're all beholden to helping the company survive, and that means revenue. If it were so easy, everyone would be successful. I think all of us have had some successes in our careers, and all of us have had some failures. And the failures are sometimes you get upset and you say, "Damn it! How come my friends are all successful? Why am I not? Why am I not doing this?" And I think when you look around and you looked on your LinkedIn or you look on your Facebook and you see your friends from high school and you say, "Well, actually, if I'm objective about it, most of them are, working in a coal mine or, working at the gas station." So the difference between success and failure is often arbitrary. Ways some people rise and some people stay flat, and some people, I've had 4 or 5 bosses who are completely out of the industry. Who knows? It's like the universe. It's arbitrary. Career does not equal life. Again, the camera's off for this. A lot of things happen in your life. Your family, whether it's your parents or whether it's your kids or whether it's your spouse. And I would say all of those things are probably definitely more important than your career. And I think you get caught up sometimes in that this is the most important, and I think sometimes you negate attention to those other things in your life that probably are more important. And at the end of the day, try to be a decent human being. Okay, some specifics. What companies are thinking. When you come into a company and you have your resume, and they're looking at your resume, and the first thing they're looking at Todd R's resume, and they say, "Okay, do I know anybody who knows this person? Recommend." So I get a resume from Todd. I go on LinkedIn and look at Todd, and if he's like a 3rd degree connection, I say, he knows nobody that I know? So that's bad. If we have like 40 people in common, I say, "Okay, he's real. He's a real guy." If you're 2nd degree and I know somebody who knows you, I'm going to reach out and say, "Just FYI, I met a guy named Todd R. And I won't out you and say you're applying for a job, but I'll say, what do you know about him? Is he a good guy? Is he smart? Have I ever heard of the companies this person has worked for?" If the answer is yes, that helps, because you have a mental picture of where this person's been, what they've done. If all the companies are out in Omaha and you don't know what they are, then that hurts you. Again, when we just looked for an editor, and we had 200 resumes that came in. We didn't even have time to look at all the resumes. So when people say, "I'm sending a resume into a black hole," it's true. You're sending it into a black hole. It was based on where we happened to go into bamboo. We hit on page 1 and started looking at people. Sometimes the people who applied first were on page 5. It was completely arbitrary who we looked at. We were able to vet 50, 75.
Scanned through their portfolios more
Okay.
than looked at their stuff.
So a lot of people didn't even. We missed some great people who could have been a great editor, who would have been a great editor. I'm sure of the 100 we didn't look at, 50 were pretty good. So if you have worked for companies nobody's ever heard of, you're going to get knocked out pretty quick in that competitive of a process. Does the person have specific experience we need? Obviously. If we're hiring for a graphics guy and you don't have exact graphic experience, but you say, well, no, but I was in accounting and I did start to learn some graphic stuff, and it's like, no. Has this person ever been promoted? This is something I always look for, because a lot of people, particularly now, you have a job for 2 years and then 2 years and 1 year and then 3 years. And so you jump around a lot more than you did even 10 years ago, but certainly more than 20 years ago. And I want to know, as a person, if you worked at A&E, did you start as a manager and promoted to a director, and then you went somewhere else for 2 years and 2 years? It's not just going from a director here to a VP there. But does some company like you enough that they were willing to give you a jump? Employment gaps don't necessarily mean that much, because shit happens. But a big employment gap, if it's for something other than like pregnancy or care, you might have to care for an aging relative. You might have to follow your spouse to Arkansas because they got a great job there. So it doesn't necessarily mean anything, but those are the questions somebody's going to ask. They're going to look more closely at a resume like that. Do they seem reasonably smart, nice, normal? I know that's a silly thing, but when you interview somebody, if they smile, if they shake your hand, if they seem like they're not nuts, that's a good thing. Are they going to generate more revenue than they cost? This is probably not a question you specifically ask, how much money are you going to, but it's something that, like particularly now that I think about on the operations side, because I know that for every person that we hire, that's probably 500 subscriptions that we got to generate to Real Vision. And when you think it in those terms, you say, shit, do we really need this person? Because it takes a couple months to generate 500 subscriptions.
Think of an opportunity cost kind of where if we don't get this person, then we're going to...
Exactly. Are they going to get along with others? There are like utility players and team players, and then there are like superstars. And sometimes you can have somebody who's such a superstar, but can't get along with other people. And you can either find a way to put them over here and say, do your job, get their job done, or more likely, at some point, it's just gonna not work out. You gotta be able to generate revenue, you gotta be able to do a spectacular job, but you gotta be able to get along with people. Are they capable of growing without impatience? Sometimes you hire a person to a role and you think, this person has got so much qualifications, they're gonna be an editor, they've already got 10 years experience, and they don't want to do that job because they've been doing that job for the last 10 years. Or they're going to get impatient after 6 months or after a year. So you got to think about, if you apply for a job and you're overqualified for it and you get knocked out in the first round, it's not about you, it's about the fact that you're probably overqualified. Is my boss going to think I'm smart for hiring this person? Okay, that's number one, right? When you're hiring somebody and you say, I'm going to deliver this person to Raoul. Is Raoul going to like this person, or is he going to say, Tarpley, what are you doing? So that kind of factors into it as well. Questions? Okay, here's what a great resume looks like. There are many great resumes. This is just one example. You got a college degree from a top tier school. You got 3 to 5 years at a well-known company in a desired field. You got 2 years at subsequent companies. You've got at least one promotion. You've had at least a year at a startup, ideally, particularly for hiring for Real Vision. No more than 10 years at a single company. It's not a killer, but it kind of indicates that you're not nimble and you're not moving around. And some of these are shortcut generalizations as well.
What if we have 4 different jobs at the company?
Say what?
What if we have 4 different jobs at the same company?
That would be fantastic. Yeah.
3 years apiece is 12 years, so that's...
Yeah. I mean, particularly you came in, you started in the mailroom, and then when you left, you're the SVP of whatever, and you had a couple of different roles in between. You say, this is somebody that's going to be good. No employment gaps or no employment gaps that can't be explained, and recommended by people I know. If you've got this, you're going to get hired. Crappy resume. No college degree or a degree from a lower tier school. There's a lot of jobs that it doesn't knock you out necessarily not to have a college degree. I think we looked at several editors. I know a couple of them didn't have a college degree. That wasn't a killer, but it makes it, and I think looking for an editor, for example, and you got somebody from Princeton and somebody from something community college, it doesn't really matter because you don't really need a Princeton degree to do that.
So they cut well.
That's right, yeah, you want to know, can they edit the damn show?
Plumbers,
Right.
let's be honest here.
But generally speaking, a degree from Princeton looks better than a degree from Arkansas Tech. Anybody here from Arkansas?
Me.
Okay, good.
No.
Okay,
Worked out for Bill Clinton, though.
crappy resume. If you've had a series of one-year jobs, that may indicate that it didn't work out, but you went to something else. It didn't work out. You went to something else. It didn't work out. If you, unknown companies in places like Parsippany, I went for the XYZ company in Parsippany, New Jersey, and you say, what the? So it's hard to judge somebody, and it's not that you ding them for it, it's just that you've got 10 other resumes of people that have worked at Netflix or worked at Facebook, and so why? Somebody who's never been promoted, they've got employment gaps, they've changed fields multiple times and never really gained traction in any of them. So you've got an entry level, I was a paralegal, and then I said, oh, well, I changed because I wanted to do this, and I became an accountant. And said, well, I changed my mind, I became a podiatrist. Typos, grammatical mistakes on resume. Again, it's probably, I would say, a little less important sometimes for like an editor. On the other hand, what it signals is inattention to detail. And if you're an editor and you don't have attention to detail, that's not good. So it's hard for me to think of, and a resume, can't you have somebody double check the proofread your resume? So like maybe one typo I'd allow, but like if somebody has more than 2 typos, it's pretty much, that's it. And that's pretty much for any job. Unless it's for like, they're gonna be moving my furniture or something, in which case I don't really care. And if they're not recommended by somebody I know, different than saying somebody's recommended. If somebody specifically says, oh, I worked with them, don't use my name, but they were kind of a problem and I wouldn't hire them again. I won't hire them, I won't hire the person. So be careful who you piss off. Nick, when you got your job, they put you through the ringer, right? Didn't you have to do like a 10-hour documentary?
They had me and the guy who, friend of mine who we both applied at the same time, they had us shoot a mock trade idea. And then originally it was, okay, you have a week to turn it around, like no rush. And then the next day I get a call from Mono, like, no, they want it like now by the end of the day today. It's like, but they know I have a full-time job, right? Like I can't just take off time from work to do this. It's like, no, you need to get it in by the end of the day today. So in between my other daily activities, I had to find some time to turn around a fake trade idea.
Welcome to Real Vision. When is this due? Nobody knows. Tomorrow.
So just FYI, we weren't quite as brutal on the editor candidates.
I'm aware.
We made them do a test, but we said, when you are ready, email us, and Sean will then give you a 24-hour or 8-hour period or whatever.
Nick was griping the whole week.
I think what Real Vision did to you was like over the top. It was unfair. It's over the top. If you got another job and you want to hire people who are loyal to the jobs, and so we could have been shooting ourselves in the foot by only hiring people who are willing to shit on their current employer to get another job, which means the next time somebody calls you and says, hey, are you interested in this role? Do this editing project by the end of the day, and you call in sick for Sean. If that's that kind of person you are? Apparently so. Anyway, okay, next steps. Number 1, this will not be your last job, unless you get it by a bus. This will not be your last job, which means it won't be your last job, and you got to think about your career with Real Vision as a part of it. but not with Real Vision as the job you're going to have when you're 65. You give every job 100% for as long as you're there. So just because it's not going to be your last job doesn't mean you say, fuck it, it's not going to be my last job. It will be your last job if that's your attitude. You got to get whatever job you're at, whether you love it, whether you hate it, you got to give 100%. If you hate your job, by all means, find a different job. Don't sit and complain, because it does two things. One, it just generates your own negative energy. Two, it keeps you from getting off your ass and doing something about it. And three, it spreads negativity to the other people in the company, which is unfair to the company that's paying your paycheck, whether or not your boss is a dick or anything else. If you don't like your job, leave, get a new job. And if you're so talented, that should not be so hard to do. So move on when it's time. You got to have your plan, your life plan, and you say, by this time next year, I want to be doing this, or I want to get a promotion. If I don't get a promotion, I shouldn't be spreading this, but then I'm going to look for another job here. Or if I don't get this raise, or once I've been at Real Vision for 2 years, or once Real Vision is sold, whatever your plan is, you got to constantly stick to your plan, stay focused on your own goals. It's not personal. When you go in to tell Raul, I'm taking another job, Raul's not going to say, you son of a bitch. He's going to say, I'm taking another job as part of my career plan. As you know, because we've spoken about it, this is what I want to do next.
Todd told me to.
Just Todd told me, yeah. And I guarantee you, Raul's going to shake your hand and say, congratulations.
It's like I'm shorting your company.
Yeah. Always be networking. So you're always, it doesn't mean you're looking for another job. It just means once every couple weeks, once a week, at least once a month, make sure you're going to either a networking event or you're in contact with somebody from LinkedIn that you worked at your last job with, just because. Help others when you can. And this mostly just goes to the fact that you want others to help you. So it's reciprocal. Your same LinkedIn network and your same network of peers. When somebody comes to you and they're out of a job, you take their call and you meet with them, or you send your resume to somebody else. If somebody calls you for a job reference and you say, yeah, I'll give you a reference, and you give them a good reference. Life is short, the universe is big. I think that sums this up in one line. That's it. Questions? Okay, 157.
Yay!
Thanks.
Thank you, Todd.